Hello, and welcome to the Student Experience podcast, where we'll be chatting to members of the University of Suffolk community, giving them the opportunity to share their experience with us. I'm Sam, and I'm a member of the Student Experience team, and in today's episode, we're joined by Adam Scott, who's a postgraduate psychology student. We discussed his course, his experience as a mature student, and his plans after graduation. So, Adam, would you like to introduce yourself and the course that you're studying?
Yes, of course. So basically, I'm Adam. I'm a sort of father of two. I'm 37 and average in every possible sort of way you can imagine, apart from potentially my BMI. No, in reality, it's yes. So I've been a teacher for 10 years, business owner for 7. I've sort of left both of those careers behind now, and here I am at the University of Suffolk retraining.
Cool.
Amazing. What was it about the University of Suffolk that sort of brought you here?
The brutally honest answer is locality. So it's, and I think that's a very unfair answer to give to the university, because in reality, the choice was between here and distance learning. So like a lot of other sort of students of my age, you've got a lot of caring responsibilities and things. You can't just sort of, like I did when I was 18, swat off to the other end of the country and sort of enjoy learning. So you've still got to be home to make the kids tea and put them to bed and things like that. Make sure there's sort of elderly parents visited in care homes and things like this as well. So in reality, it always had to be local, unless it was going to be distance learning. And distance learning, in truth, was my absolute first choice. I thought, it's just going to be so much more convenient to fit studies in and around work and things like this. I sort of almost signed up to the initial open day on a whim. That I probably won't go here. Signed up and moseyed on down just as a bit of a sort of half-day jolly, excuse to sort of get out the house for a little bit. And no, but what I obviously saw here was it turned my head a little bit, and I sort of opened my eyes to actually the potential and the possibility of going back to a full-time taught master's as opposed to a distance learning one. And in my opinion, the advantages of that vastly outweighed the benefits of distance learning.
That's great. I mean, we find that the open days can be really helpful for people. They go to the lecturers and they listen to them, and then they can really think, actually, this is for me, I think.
Absolutely. So small shout out to Rachel Martin there for being the lady who turned my head towards Suffolk University.
So, I mean, you mentioned about psychology. So I guess for you, it was only ever going to be psychology. You didn't consider any other courses at the uni when you went to the open day, or?
Mistakenly, I sort of first of all was attracted to the applications of psychology. So that was the one that came up on the search engines when I was looking for things. Now, obviously, as it turns out, the applications of psychology masters is for proper psychology students, as I'm going to term it, who've actually bothered to do an undergraduate degree in psychology before rocking up, with a pencil case and a sort of keen grin, and decided they just want to do psychology for a bit of a change. So that's for the proper masters, for the real psychology students, and for the Johnny-come-latelys like me, it was the conversion course, which is, so in actually putting sort of jokes aside, that was the big draw, in that it was BPS accredited as well, the course. So it's, in all seriousness, there's not actually that many psychology courses that are recognised by for those listeners, the British Psychological Society. It's actually accredited. By completing the course, you are then eligible for membership of the British Psychological Society, and that's what you need to then go on to do further training, like I plan to do. So that was, again, another big draw, which sort of speaks to the quality of the teaching here as well in the department, which I'm sure we're going to ask about at some point as well. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's like a topic that you're passionate about, but were there any other courses that sort of stood out to you? I know that you sort of mentioned, how you got into psychology, but was there anything that you were interested in that might have, taken your fancy instead?
Honestly, at this point in sort of my life career, as you might want to put it, I was getting very much you might want to phrase it as either being very realistic or mercenary about my focuses, but it's one of those things. I didn't have time to mess about. You know what I mean? I'm putting it lightly. I'm 37. By the time I'm going to be finished retraining, I'm 41. So whilst I was looking around, it would have been very much for something that paid, at the end of it. And I know that's a bigger thing to consider for all students these days, because what with the increasing fees and things like that, you've got to seriously consider the employability of that, of completing that degree course before you go in. And that was a big factor for me as well, and that's why I chose this one, really. The only other thing I maybe would have gone into was accounting or something like that, and we would have paid, but no offense to accountants, I can't do what you guys do. There's a limit to how much I can look at numbers and spreadsheets. But yes, I hope that answers the question in a very derisory way to accountants I accidentally went into. but yes. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned about the fact you've got childcare responsibilities, and you chose the university because of the locality. So, how are you finding sort of the study life balance?
Up to now, absolutely fine. Don't get me wrong. It's a serious undertaking, and it is intense. So the first 5 weeks have been breaking us in gently as far as they possibly can. But that's still 3.5 days sort of contact. What's that? We're about 16 hours a week in reality, contact teaching time.
Right.
Which in reality leaves a day and a half off campus. And that's been fine. That's been manageable. From November, it really sort of steps up into 5 days a week, about 6 hours a day teaching. Right. So that's up until Christmas. And then beyond that, it actually starts to slacken off again in terms of the actual teaching time as it transitions into, for the conversion course people like me, more or less about learning new stuff. This is why it's so intense at the minute, is trying to really get all the learning into us, into then the master's element of things, which is conducting your own research and studies and things like this to bring it up to the master's level in sort of double quick time. So it's so getting around that, the reality is you're probably going to need someone at home who's supporting you in that sort of, which I'm sort of very lucky to have. So a small shout out to Mrs. Scott there, who's sort of being an absolute saint in the background in sort of letting me take a year off work and to come and retrain.
Yeah.
Now you sound super busy. I mean, I'm sure that, every day is, full of tasks and, obviously that comes with its challenges. But what does a typical day look like for you here at the university?
So largely, the morning, completely unchanged from a work week, apart from I'm the one who's sort of getting up, getting the kids dressed, breakfast, things like that, and send them off to school. My wife, she now works, luckily she works from home for part of the week. So on the day she's working from home, actually, it's sort of like the two of us sort of tag teaming things, which makes, the morning go a little bit easier. And then by the time the kids are sort of shuffled out the door, basically it's then hot-footing it sort of into the car, come down to campus. Now, on most days, that's absolutely fine. That works quite nicely because the teaching day starts at 10. But on some of the days when we're in like I am at the minute, in with the undergraduates, because as a conversion course, you're still learning some of the undergraduate stuff. It starts at 9, so that's a photo finish as I sort of come through the lecture room door sort of thing right before the lecture starts. And but once that bit of the day is out the way, absolutely, to me, that's absolutely fantastic. I love it from that point on because it's my happy place. I get to come here, learn new things, which is, frankly, just exciting and fun. And then by the time the end of the day comes round, my brain's just about sort of had enough for the day. Pack up, head back home, pick the kids up from school, and back on with family life until about 7 o'clock. Get the kids to bed, and then do a little bit more reading till about 10 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I was going to say, repeat the next day.
Rinse and repeat, yeah. Yeah. So it's no getting around it. Like they warned me it would be intense. Yeah, and it is. But the advantage is it's done in 9 months, isn't it? So, yeah.
So you mentioned about the fact that you love coming to uni and learning new things. So have you got a favourite part about studying here at the university?
Do you know what? It's honestly the biggest part of it, I think, is that just being surrounded by the undergraduates at the minute. Mm-hmm. That's something I wasn't expecting. It's something I wasn't anticipating I'd particularly enjoy. Sorry, that sounds like I'm just the idea of being surrounded by undergraduates is just painful. No, I mean, but it's just something I didn't really think about. But actually, having been in a workplace for 18, 19 years or whatever it is now, since I was last studying, and then coming back in, do you know what? It's just nice to be surrounded by younger people who are just less cynical about things. And it's actually just been a lovely sort of tonic to just see people who are unironically enthusiastic about things and just full of hope and haven't been beaten down by the system or anything yet. So, do you know when it does? And it actually, on a very real level, it sort of energizes you as well. And it's sort of almost like a detox for the cynicism and sort of bitterness that gets sort of bandied around so in the work environment, which I'm sure a lot of people will sort of understand if they're my age as well. There's beyond that, I'd probably just say, do you know what? It's just an absolute joy to be here. Like I said, I was a teacher for 10 years. It's just an absolute joy to be on the other side of the desk again. Just with the opportunity to soak everything up, especially with the quality of, the lecturers are fantastic, the fellow students are being fantastic. It's just really enjoyable, really happy place to be.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. So what year did you finish your undergraduate course?
Good Lord. Right. Make me do maths and everything. So that would have been 2008.
Okay. So, quite a long gap between what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. So what would you say has been the biggest difference that you've noticed in higher education since completing your undergraduate course and coming to do this master's course now?
Oh, honestly, it's massive. That's I actually had to double check this with my wife, Tish. Because I came home after the first week, and I was like, do you know what? It's just, this sounds really strange, but the lecturers, not only do they know who I am, but they actually seem to know how to teach people, and sort of care about it. I don't know. So it was, whereas back in 2008, I mean, I was one of, in the lectures, I was thinking I was going to say one of 3, maybe 400.
Wow.
In the lecture hall for each of the lectures. And in the best will in the world, you're very much, for a better time, you're an arse in a chair. You're just, no, there's absolutely no chance your lecturer will ever know who you are. And the expectation wasn't there that they would. No, none of the students ever expected that the lecturer would be able to recognise them, let alone know them by name. Mine do in the first week here now. It's incredible. Going back to 2008, all the seminars were just conducted by PhD students, which is perfectly acceptable for teaching sort of undergraduates. Absolutely fine. There's but the idea that a lecturer would conduct a seminar is just it's always beneath contempt a little bit. You know what I mean? It's but no, in the seminars, you've got the actual lecturers, the professors, the guys with all the qualifications, and it's that. And I don't know if that's a size of the university thing I'm really experiencing, or is it actually just times have changed and people want more from their more from the universities, and the universities have answered. And I don't know. So I've been out of the loop for 17 years. But to just go thinking back to how it was to how it is now, it's night and day. It's 1,000 times better. Absolutely.
That's really good to hear. So you mentioned that you've been dipping into the undergrad courses, and you graduated in 2008. So have you got any sort of big differences between undergraduate a degree and now into a postgraduate? Perhaps the amount of workload or the difficulty.
I have to admit, yes, that was, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I can't speak to what the undergraduate degree experience is like now, because I think back and I worked hard, but then I was thinking, do you know what? I was still out most nights, and I was just out, especially on the weekends, and there was, a fair number of. There may have been sort of seminars and lectures that got missed due to hangovers and things like this. And I still did well, academically, and I got out. But it's the degree university experience was much more sort of like a coming of age experience, really. It's, it was one path into adulthood, a journey of self-discovery as much as it was about, coming out with a bit of paper that says, oh, well done, Mr. Scott, you've got a degree, and that proves you can largely read and think, from time to time. Whereas now, actually, no, this is, at the postgraduate level, there is definitely a step up in terms of it is work. You have to approach it with a very, very strong work ethic. And be sort of bloody minded about it and know what you're here to do. But the biggest difference, again, like I said, is whereas I was prepared to come into the university as if it was 2008 and saying, oh, look, they call it reading a degree for a reason. They're almost, the lecturers are here to tell you stuff. They're not here to help you learn, right? They're just here to deliver. And, we'll take your money for the grace of, marking your work and things like this. That's what I was prepared to come into. What I've actually come into is, they're actually here to help as well. They're interested in seeing me succeed. All of us succeed as well. So it's that's been a really pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I mean, you've spoken about how sort of attentive the lecturers are to the students. What would you say, how have you found the support here at the University of Suffolk?
Again, perhaps my expectations have just been set really low by so many years, but because I just sound overjoyed by everything, don't I? But I genuinely am. I was, in terms of the support so far, I don't know if it's a self-assurance thing that sort of comes of being a sort of more mature student, but I always think, if I'm paying sort of, £9,000 to sit in a room, and if I've got questions, I'm going to ask them. And, anyway, and every question I've asked, whether it's in the intervals or whatever, the lecturers have always been welcome and ready, accepting and able to answer them. So another thing, for example, is I'm starting to think ahead to my research project, which is coming up. It sounds like a long time away in April. But,
that'll come round quick.
Yeah, exactly. But I've got to get whatever I propose through ethics committees and all sorts. So I'm thinking about it now. And already, I've approached sort of the lecturers about, certain research topics, what's going to be feasible, what isn't. And everyone's had time for me. Nothing's too much bother. Yes, Adam, come, let's have a chat afterwards. And we'll talk through a few options. And just everybody's been incredibly supportive. And what another thing I'm going to talk about as well is probably on that subject is the is it personal academic coaches? I think you've got here. And now I believe I had those back in sort of when I did my undergraduate degree. I don't think I ever saw one. I think it was just an email address that was on your welcome pack, and I don't know if how much they were really involved in anything. I'm sure some people got the value of money for them, but we actually had a meeting with ours. My particular pack is Jen over in the psychology department, who was also a student here apparently, I believe, and then she's sort of got work in the department and sort of carrying on up. But no, she's been fantastic in terms of support and questions I've asked, everything from the ridiculous to the mundane to the vaguely sort of academic I've managed to scrape out. She's been then helped me as well. So just having almost the depth of support there you know that even in the unlikely situation that one person is going to be too busy to answer your question that day, even if your question does need answering right then, there's always someone else you can turn to and another expert within the department. That's incredibly reassuring and fantastic to have.
I mean, it sounds like, you've really enjoyed it so far and you've had quite a smooth ride, and especially with the support you've got. But has there been any sort of challenges that you've faced since you started and that you've overcome? Or
honestly, the biggest challenge, and again, I keep talking like this like I'm Father Time or something, but probably for any mature student is the biggest challenge is deciding to do it in the first place. It's it's no joke. There's a very real commitment of, unfortunately, my bank manager still, he's really selfish in that he wants me to keep paying my mortgage and things like this. And, and when I'm not working for a year, that's a challenge. So luckily I have got support at home. And one of the things I really drilled down on the open day, and it sounds really grim, I was asking him, who fails this? What's the failure rate? Because if I'm going for this, I want to know what the failure rate is, what are the most common causes of failure in the course, what is, anything I can think of that would result in failure, so that at the end of it, I'm not only, at least at the end of it, I'm qualified and could be success, instead of at the end of the year, I'm £10,000 in the hole and I still don't have a psychology degree at the end of it. So it was a real sort of concern, as it's got to be. And one of the big things that reassured me there was Rachel Martin, who at the time of the open day was sort of head of the course at the time, and now she came in as a mature student. I think she didn't even do her undergraduate degree, she was saying, till her 30s, when she had 2 kids in tow and all sorts of things. So her listening to her story, how she got through it and did it, was sort of real reassurance to me. Like, actually, no, not only can it be done, but there's staff in the department who get it a little bit. It's much as it's enjoyable being here, I'm not here for fun. I'm, at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to. The stuff I learn here is ultimately what's gonna put food on my kid's table. At the end of it, so it's, much as it's enjoyable, it's not a joke. We have to take it seriously, and yes, it's a big reassurance to know that there's a lot of staff in the department who get that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even think that answered your question. So
it did. Yeah,
I think that was the perfect answer. Yeah. I mean, sort of tailing on from that, what advice would you maybe have for students who are maybe mature or have been in the workforce for a little while and want to return to their studies? What advice would you give to those students considering that option?
I think, a bit like I've said already, it's so much different. Perhaps their experience was a lot better than mine, but I look back on 2008, 2005, my undergraduate degree, really fondly. It was a fantastic, maturing, like I said, this journey of self-discovery and whatnot, and it was fantastic. But the whole experience, I think, is just transformed, and I think maybe that's possibly one of the silver linings that come out of tuition fees being so much higher these days. Students have rightly demanded more from the universities as over the years, and I can say, it's nice to reap the benefits of that, even if it does mean very real, very immediate challenges around finances, time management, childcare, and the other responsibilities in your life. In terms of advice, if you are where I was, you sort of stuck in a bit of a rut sort of thing, not wondering what to do with yourself, and you've got to retrain if you're going to change anything, then my advice is, just before you listen to the blue sky thinking, the dream stuff of, go do it, you can be anything, stop for a second, look at the reality of your situation. Can you get your children to school, back from school? Can you meet all your care responsibilities? Can you get the bills paid at the end of the month? And do you know what? If you really think of it of an idea of, do you know what, I have to do this, do you know what, you'll find ways to do it. Certainly. Some people won't, and in those cases I would say, do you know what, think again, because university is a real expense in more ways than one, mainly just from the lost income more than the immediate expense of tuition fees. But if you have got that, if it is feasible, almost the rest of it, thinking about the academic challenges and things like that, they're almost false worries that you needn't have these days. Go to the local university wherever you are. Obviously, if you're around about Suffolk, fantastic, come here. But get in touch with the university, go to the open days, talk to the academic staff. You'll find the breadth of experience and and by which I mean of life experience within the departments is really going to sort of open your eyes and sort of reassure you to the fact that actually, no, this can be done and it's worth it. So I know one friend who's considering doing his medical training. He's only a year younger than me, so that's what it is, 9 years till he becomes a doctor. Wow. And it's like, it's a long time to train to be in your late 40s and then become a junior doctor.
Yeah.
But it's something he's always wanted. He regretted putting it off when he was younger, and he sort of said, well, I can either be 50 and not a doctor, or 50 and be a doctor. And he says, well, I want to be 50 anyway, so I may as well go be 50 and be a doctor, which I've always wanted.
Yeah,
which is absolutely, which is absolutely, when he puts it like that, it's hard to argue with, isn't it? So it's,
That's
go do it.
That's really good advice for those mature students. So you mentioned a bit earlier about your research project and your sort of dissertation. So what sort of specific ideas have you got for that?
Oh, goodness. No. There's two areas I'm looking at in particular. One is educational psychology, which is kind of the area I want to go into, the path of least resistance, if you like. So I could do that, and I've got a few questions around, reading interventions and things like this, like the use of, does singing help retention and learning of phonics and letter sounds in the very young, for example, 3-year-olds, to what extent does that impact things like this? That's one area, like I said, but honestly, I've also had a sort of itch I've been wanting to scratch for about 20 odd years, which is to look at the psychology of belief as well, in particularly religious belief. And that largely comes from a personal experience. So I'm going to enjoy looking at what it is, what's the psychology around closeted atheists, and why do so many atheists continue to go to church or to temple or wherever they're going to and stay active within religious communities, even though they've lost their belief. It's gone. And there's a lot around that in terms of social isolation, ostracism, fear of all sorts of different social factors and psychological factors. So it's something I'm interested in looking at. And again, just being here, whilst it's very much a work-oriented retraining opportunity, it is also just an opportunity in a broader sense to learn and do these things you've been interested in for years. So it's scratch that itch and spread your wings a little bit. So I might just do that.
Two very different sort of ideas you got there, so that'd be a tough decision.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like you have quite a range of interests just within the field of psychology. So what would you say your plans are after graduating?
Well, I'm very, very much sort of entered into this with the idea of training to become an educational psychologist. It plays to my strengths, just in terms of the type of things I enjoy doing and happen to be good at throughout my career. There's more to it than that. Another reason I chose the in-person course as opposed to the distance learning ones is that actively come into contact with so many experts who've got expertise in different areas. So whilst, yes, I'm here with my interest of educational psychology, on a daily basis I'm meeting people with expertise in forensic psychology, criminal psychology, sports psychology. I can't even think of more psychologies, but but they're there. Which is embarrassing. They're all there, and I just wanted to come into this knowing that, always got the educational psychology route. That's certainly something I'd enjoy. But certainly for this stage, the master's degree, before I go into any sort of doctoral specialist subject area, this is the year to have my head turned, potentially. Do you know what? Yeah, clinical psychology, that sounds pretty cool. Oh, sitting in court, getting cross-examined, by lawyers. So, are you sure, Mr. Scott? Are you sure this is a sound diagnosis of this chap's, criminal mentality? Oh yeah. Oh, that looks like fun. Yeah, I think I'd be good at that. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? So you might be sat here on the next year talking about my PhD study, talking about how
absolutely.
I got turned into the psychology of something else. Psychology of squids or something. I don't know if that's a thing. I'll find out. Doubtless week 12 of the course. Yeah.
Yeah. So you gave some advice earlier to maybe students who are interested in returning to studies, but would, now having studied postgraduate for a little while, is there anything that you would say to yourself on your first day of university? Maybe that was back in 2005, or maybe your first day of university here.
Ooh, so what would I tell myself if it was so let's have what a fantastic question. What would I tell younger Adam to do if he could do it all again?
Or not do.
Or not do it again, yeah. There's do you know what? Genuinely, nothing. I don't think from the university point of view. So from my undergraduate degree, absolutely fine. I don't think I'd do anything differently there. Largely fantastic voyage of self-discovery. So I don't regret that at all. Probably with the so my teacher training, which I did as a PGCE course, which is the course you pay out for instead of getting paid to be a teacher, because they said, if you do the PGCE course, that's the course of future leaders. So, yeah, so it's much more likely to be head teacher if you do a PGCE. I think I would have loved to have had a little bit more wisdom at the time. Just love to say, do you know what? £20,000 extra in the bank counts for a lot more than a piece of paper that says PGCE on it, as opposed to skit on the top of it. So it's yes. So don't fall for the idea you've got to pay out to be a teacher, to be training to be a teacher. No, do it on the job. Yeah, that's probably it. To be honest. Yeah, hopefully that's enough.
It's good to know.
Yeah. So you mentioned a bit earlier about sort of advice that you'd give to mature students coming back to university, but sort of more generally, have you got any advice you'd give to students starting university for the first time?
Oh, I'd be very cautious about this because I'm aware of sort of how out of touch I am a little bit with the sort of the younger students anyway, in terms of what university looks like to them as opposed to what it looked like to me in 2005. In 2005, it was largely big school where you can do stuff where your parents aren't watching. You know what I mean? That was, and you can have quite a lot of fun. Now I did have 2 jobs whilst I was studying at the same time, but they were largely for fun money. I'm aware these days the student experience is significantly different to what it was then. In that I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't have a job, and relies on that job financially. So in terms of my advice, I'd probably say the younger ones probably just grab every opportunity to have fun, do with it what you can, but Yeah, but for goodness sake, not to the extent that I did it, because here you'll be in financial ruin by the sounds of it if you did that today. Yeah.
Well, we're sort of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all good advice. We're sort of coming to the end of the episode, but before we do, is there anything that you would like to discuss, or anything that you would like to say to the listeners out there before we head to our last segment?
Oh, yes. Come join up for my psychological research study. No, I desperately need volunteers. I don't know what it is yet, but yes, please come volunteer. No, in reality, again, I'd just like to reiterate the point. If you are a mature student out there, and again, you're umming and ahhing about, do I retrain? And you're maybe thinking about distance learning, open university, something like that. Actually, maybe think again just before you make that decision. The advantages of coming to do a full-time taught master's are phenomenal, just in terms of the breadth of the people you'll meet, the expertise available to you, and the opportunities that are just around you that you'll just happen and stumble upon when you're physically in the building, in the seat, surrounded by everyone, and all the talents are really quite profound. So if you're at that point of thinking, go to the open days, ask the questions, send those emails, get on the phone, whatever it takes, find out if it will work for you, and if it will, don't think again, just do it.
Great advice.
That's brilliant. So come to our final question now, which is our answer one, ask one question. So you're going to answer a question from previous guests, and you're going to post one to the next guest. So previous guests we had on were the sustainability team at the university.
Mm-hmm.
So the question they asked, which is an interesting one, is what changes have you made for the sort of purposes of sustainability in your life recently?
Oh, so in a very now I'm a friend of the planet and all that sort of stuff, but I'm very much the friend of the planet in a way that a tired person can be, do you know?
Right.
So if it's you know, the hard realities of like I don't compost, for example, you know, but in reality I have changed all my light bulbs to LED ones. The electricity, the meter, the thermostat, it stays at 16. You know, it's like my kids put jumpers on. Actually, they don't feel the cold at all.
You're putting the jumper on.
Yeah, it's me. It's me, the missus, who just starts shivering in the room at the especially around this time of year. But aside from the stuff that's just self-beneficial in that it keeps the bills down, largely it's the things around sort of packaging that get me, I'll be honest. So really trying to reduce anything that's just in superfluous packaging. The broccoli, the cabbages in shrink wrapped packaging, for example. It's just, you know, that sort of thing. You know, you try to buy your stuff, and again, you don't have to be the you know, this martyr to, you know, this green living. You can get Whole Foods, like you can get it Amazon, for goodness sake. Okay, we're probably getting turned up in a diesel driven van, but you know, but again, it's less packaging. You know, you can get the stuff. So that's my little thing. Yeah, that's probably it. That's I've done. Sorry, I haven't saved a whale or sort of given a Heimlich maneuver to a dolphin or anything like that in the last few weeks. But but like I say, it's it's the little things, isn't it? I suppose if everyone does them, that makes the big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, would you like to pose a question to our next guest then?
Oh, just because the question you asked me earlier was such a good one, I'd like to see them squirm a little bit as well. So if they had. So, mystery guest of the future. So, if you had your time again, what would you do differently?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
No, that's a perfect question. Yeah, amazing.
So, that was a really enjoyable podcast. So, until next time, it's goodbye from Adam.
No, thank you very much.
It's goodbye from Emily.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Student Experience podcast. If you would like to be a future guest, email studentexperiencesteam@uos.ac.uk or follow the links to our application form through our Brightspace page. You can also reach out to us through our Instagram page @UOS_student experience.